Look down at your feet, right now. Tap your heel against the floor. Feel the compression. The soft, yielding sink of your modern sneakers. You call it comfort. Biomechanics calls it sensory deprivation. That layer of synthetic padding is not protecting you. It is lying to you. It is a neurological blindfold executing a systematic shutdown of the most sophisticated sensory array in your biological machine. The plantar surface of the human foot is a masterpiece of sensory engineering. It contains tens of thousands of mechanoreceptors, Pacinian corpuscles, Ruffini endings, Meissner's corpuscles. These microscopic sensors were designed over 2 million years of evolutionary pressure to read the exact physical geometry of the Earth. They measure micro-fluctuations in pressure gradients. They detect shear forces. They calculate surface rigidity. They are engineered to transmit this precise spatial data through the spinal cord to your central nervous system at velocities exceeding 120 meters per second. But right now, that data highway is completely severed. Your feet are imprisoned inside a permanent cast, a 3-centimeter block of EVA foam. This synthetic layer acts as an absolute signal jammer, a low-pass filter that eradicates the vital high-frequency data your brain desperately needs to calculate movement. Your mechanoreceptors are screaming into a void. Your cerebellum is completely blind to the reality of the ground beneath you. Because the foam dampens the sensory input, your nervous system registers a false environment. It assumes the world is soft. It disengages your natural shock-absorbing mechanics. It allows you to smash your heel into concrete with a localized numbness that you have mistaken for safety. You think this shoe is absorbing the impact. Biomechanical force plates at Harvard prove the exact opposite. It is driving a kinetic shockwave of 3 times your body weight directly into your knee cartilage every single second. But physics does not care about your comfort. Energy cannot be destroyed. The kinetic impact is still occurring. The mechanical load is still entering your skeleton. You have simply turned off the biological alarm system while the structure is being hammered. The foam beneath your heel deceives your senses, but the conservation of energy cannot be tricked. So if thousands of newtons of ground reaction force are no longer being absorbed by the intricate mechanics of your foot, where exactly is that violent kinetic energy going? Let us mechanize the human stride. To understand the tragedy of the modern shoe, you must first understand the physics of a collision. Walking is not a smooth, continuous glide. It is a series of controlled falls. With every step, your body mass plummets toward the earth. When you make contact, you trigger Newton's third law of motion. You hit the planet. The planet hits back. This is the ground reaction force. In an optimal biological system, the cerebellum anticipates this collision. It relies on the dense network of mechanoreceptors in the sole of the foot to send high-resolution telemetry about the ground's density, texture, and angle. It needs this data instantly. The brain uses this telemetry to pre-tension the muscles of the lower leg, to set the exact angle of the ankle, and to prepare the biological shock absorbers for impact. But you are wearing a thick layer of synthetic EVA foam. This foam acts as an acoustic and mechanical low-pass filter. It entirely eradicates the sharp, sudden spikes in pressure that signal a rigid surface. The high-frequency data is silenced. The cerebellum receives nothing but muted, ambiguous static. Operating in the dark, the central nervous system computes a critical error. It assumes the ground is soft, compliant, and forgiving. It abandons the evolutionary protocol. It dictates a biomechanical catastrophe, the heel strike. Look at the anatomy. The heel bone, the calcaneus, is a massive, rigid block of bone. It contains no joints. It has no mechanism for elastic recoil. When you land on your heel, you are driving a bony hammer directly into the pavement. In a barefoot stride, landing on the midfoot or forefoot allows the collision to occur over a prolonged duration. The arch of the foot flattens. The Achilles tendon stretches, storing kinetic energy like a massive biological spring. The calf muscles fire eccentrically, controlling the deceleration. Because the time of the impact is extended, the peak force is drastically reduced. Physics dictates that force equals mass times acceleration. Increase the duration of the impact, and you decrease the acceleration. The shock is absorbed. The cushioned shoe destroys this equation. Because the heel strikes first, the biological springs are bypassed. The Achilles tendon is completely taken out of the shock-absorbing kinetic chain. The arch of the foot is immobilized. The time of the collision drops to near zero. This generates an isolated, violent spike in kinetic energy, known in biomechanics as the impact transient. It is a shockwave. The synthetic foam compresses under your weight in milliseconds, instantly bottoming out. It does not absorb the energy. It merely delays it by a fraction of a second before transmitting it completely. The localized pain receptors in your heel are muffled, so you feel no immediate agony. You falsely believe the shoe absorbed the impact. It did not. The energy simply bypassed the foot. The shockwave propagates vertically. It travels at high velocity up the rigid, axial column of the tibia. The shin bone becomes a high-speed transmission line for a destructive mechanical wave. The destination for this wave is the knee joint. The tibiofemoral articulation is a complex hinge designed for smooth gliding and moderate, dynamically controlled compression. Inside this joint sits the meniscus, two crescent-shaped pads of fibrocartilage, and a thin, vulnerable layer of articular cartilage. These tissues are exceptionally engineered to manage friction. They are absolutely not designed to arrest a supersonic axial shockwave. Yet this is exactly what you force them to do. With every single heel strike, a compressive load equivalent to 2 or 3 times your total body weight slams into the knee cartilage. You take 10,000 steps a day. That is 10,000 violent, unmitigated microscopic collisions. 10,000 hammer blows delivered directly to a fragile cartilage layer that possesses no blood supply to repair itself. The compressive load forces the knee into rapid eccentric deceleration. The patellofemoral joint grinds. The shear force tears at the microscopic collagen matrix of the meniscus. The cartilage cells, the chondrocytes, suffer repeated microtrauma. They die off, slowly, silently, step by step. You traded foot awareness for systemic joint destruction. The numbness in your heel bought you the osteoarthritis in your knee. Physics does not care about the logo on your shoe or the retail marketing of your air cushion. The sheer force is still tearing through your knee cartilage every single day. If you possess the intellectual courage to look at how your biological machine is being destroyed by modern convenience, subscribe to this channel. If not, go back to buying fake comfort. The body is an integrated kinetic chain. You cannot isolate a mechanical failure. The force that survives the knee continues upward, altering the pelvic tilt, transferring shear stress into the lumbar vertebrae, and remodeling your entire posture around a fundamental biomechanical lie. You are walking on a foundation of sensory deprivation, and the upper floors of the building are taking the structural damage. This machine was programmed for absolute perfection. So, when the cerebellum is blindfolded by industrial foam, what ancient evolutionary structure did the body have to sacrifice to act as the scapegoat for this missing data? 2 million years. That is how long hominid bipedalism required to perfect the mechanical architecture of the human foot. 50 years. That is how long it took the modern footwear industry to completely dismantle it. This is the ultimate evolutionary mismatch. You are operating a Pleistocene machine inside a synthetic environment, and the hardware is failing, exactly as physics dictates it must. Look at the mechanical blueprint of the barefoot. It is not a rigid block of flesh. It is a highly dynamic, variable stiffness suspension system. The human foot is constructed of 26 individual bones. It contains 33 distinct articulating joints. It is bound together by over 100 interlocking muscles, tendons, and ligaments. This is a tensegrity structure designed to adapt instantly to roots, rocks, and the unpredictable geometry of the earth. When a bare foot contacts the ground, the plantar fascia elongates under load. The transverse and longitudinal arches flatten, absorbing kinetic energy through mechanical deformation. As your body weight shifts forward, a biomechanical phenomenon called the windlass mechanism engages. The toes extend, the plantar fascia tightens like a winch, and the foot instantly transitions from a flexible, impact-absorbing pad into a rigid, powerful lever for forward propulsion. It is an absolute engineering marvel. Now, look at what you put it inside. The modern shoe is not an accessory. It is structural confinement. In orthopedic medicine, if a physician wants to intentionally atrophy a muscle, degrade a tendon, and freeze a joint, they put the limb in a rigid plaster cast. The modern sneaker is a bilateral, permanent cast. You lace your feet into these structural prisons every single morning. You lock 33 articulating joints into a singular, immobile position. You force the toes into a narrow, tapered toe box, destroying the wide base of support required for lateral stability and completely disabling the big toe from anchoring the windlass mechanism. The biological rule is absolute. Tissue adapts to the mechanical demands placed upon it. By supporting the arch with synthetic foam contours, you remove the mechanical demand from the intrinsic muscles of the foot. The muscles undergo rapid atrophy. The connective tissue remodels to the restricted range of motion. The 33 joints fuse into functional stiffness. This is arch deformation. Your arch does not fall because you are aging. It collapses because you outsourced its structural integrity to a piece of factory-molded polyurethane. The structural failure travels up the kinetic chain. Consider the Achilles tendon. It evolved to act as a massive elastic spring, capturing gravitational potential energy and releasing it with each step. But modern shoes feature elevated heels. A standard 12mm heel drop holds the ankle in chronic plantar flexion. The Achilles tendon adapts to this angle by physically shortening. It loses its elasticity. It becomes rigid, brittle, and highly susceptible to rupture. You took a magnificent biological spring and turned it into a calcified tether. The marketing departments sold you this confinement under the guise of comfort. But biological systems do not thrive on comfort. They thrive on mechanical stress. Comfort is the absence of stimulus. The absence of stimulus is the definition of biological decay. By choosing the artificial plushness of padded shoes, you stripped your lower extremities of their required mechanical loading. The foot is no longer a shock absorber. It is a dead, numb block at the end of your leg. Because the foot can no longer mitigate the impact transient, the kinetic energy must go elsewhere. The knees, the hips, and the lumbar spine are forced to manage high-velocity impact loads they were never evolutionarily designed to handle. You traded the functional integrity of your entire skeleton for the illusion of walking on clouds. Our ancestors navigated jagged rocks and uneven earth for 2 million years, using only naked bone, muscle, and skin. What makes the primitive foot arch, the exact structure you are currently suffocating inside a narrow toe box, mechanically superior to every piece of synthetic material ever engineered in a modern laboratory. The multi-billion-dollar athletic footwear industry is constructed on a biomechanical lie. They claim their proprietary foams reduce impact. They sell you mathematical models of energy return and shock absorption. The empirical data violently disagrees. We do not need marketing brochures. We need force plates, high-speed kinematics, and raw biomechanical analysis. In 2010, the journal Nature published a landmark study that annihilated the modern cushioning paradigm. Dr. Daniel Lieberman, a professor of human evolutionary biology at Harvard University, placed the human stride under strict empirical scrutiny. His team measured the exact kinetic forces traveling through the skeletal systems of habitually barefoot runners, compared to those wearing heavily cushioned athletic shoes. The instruments recorded the brutal reality of the heel strike. When a cushioned shoe strikes the ground, the force plate registers a massive, instantaneous vertical spike in kinetic energy. This is the impact transient. It is the exact moment the heel collides with the earth. In a cushioned shoe, this collision happens in less than 50 milliseconds. The force equals up to 3 times your body weight. Think about that number. If you weigh 80 kilograms, you are driving 240 kilograms of force directly up your tibia, into your knee joint, thousands of times per day. The foam does not eliminate this spike. It merely slows the deceleration by a negligible fraction of a second, just enough to numb the skin while the bone takes the maximum hit. It is an invisible sledgehammer. Now, look at Lieberman's barefoot data. When humans move without the sensory blindfold of a shoe, the cerebellum receives instantaneous, high-resolution feedback from the skin. It physically refuses to smash the heel bone into the earth. The central nervous system automatically dictates a forefoot or midfoot strike. When the forefoot contacts the ground first, the ankle joint acts as a rotational hinge. The calf muscles fire eccentrically to lower the heel to the ground with absolute control. The translational kinetic energy is brilliantly converted into elastic strain energy within the Achilles tendon. The result on the force plate is a revelation. The impact transient completely disappears. It is not reduced. It is erased. A barefoot human landing on solid asphalt generates a smoother, less destructive force curve than a human wearing 3 centimeters of highly engineered industrial foam. The barefoot structure uses mechanical geometry to absorb load. The shoe relies on material compression, and the material mathematically fails. Numbers from Harvard do not exist to debate your habits. They are there to convict your comfort. If you want your shallow belief system dismantled by pure science, subscribe to this channel. The devastation extends far beyond force vectors. It reaches the cellular level. Biomechanist Katie Bowman, in her extensive work, Move Your DNA, details the microscopic degradation caused by modern footwear. Mechanical loads dictate cellular adaptation. When you place a foot in a rigid, supportive shoe, you alter the mechanical stress applied to the 26 bones and surrounding tissues. You create a localized environment of mechanical starvation. Osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building and maintaining bone density, require mechanical stress to function. Without the natural torsion, bending, and variable loading of a barefoot stride, the bones of the foot become osteopenic. They lose density. The cellular matrix of the plantar fascia weakens. The intrinsic muscles atrophy at a microscopic level. You are not just restricting movement. You are starving your cells of the physical geometry they require to maintain their structural integrity. The shoe is forcing a pathological, cellular adaptation. The empirical evidence is absolute. Cushioning does not reduce impact. It alters the geometry of the collision to ensure your passive joints take the damage instead of your active muscle tissue. When the biomechanical instruments tracked the precise trajectory of this destructive force, what did Dr. Lieberman find that the billion-dollar shoe industry desperately wants to hide about the future of your knee cartilage? The intervention is not a purchase. You cannot buy your way out of a biomechanical deficit. The solution is absolute subtraction. You must remove the low-pass filter. You must expose the biological hardware to the raw, unforgiving geometry of the earth. The protocol is simple, yet highly contrarian. Barefoot movement, or the strict use of zero-drop minimalist footwear with zero cushioning and an anatomically wide toe box. A zero-drop platform places the heel and the forefoot on the exact same transverse plane. It eliminates the artificial elevation that holds the ankle in chronic plantar flexion. It brings the machine back to absolute neutral alignment. This is not a gentle transition. It is a harsh, uncompromising mechanical reset. When you strip away the EVA foam, the sequence of physical recovery is precise, and it begins the millisecond your foot strikes the ground. Let us observe the neural recalibration, minute by minute. Minute 1. Your unprotected heel strikes the hard surface. The impact is immediate and jarring. The tens of thousands of dormant mechanoreceptors in the plantar skin are suddenly flooded with high-frequency telemetry. This is absolute sensory overload. You will perceive this massive influx of raw data as acute discomfort. Do not be fooled. It is not an injury, it is an error signal. The central nervous system is finally receiving the exact mechanical truth about the ground's rigidity. It instantly registers that your current gait is structurally catastrophic, and it violently rejects the corrupted movement pattern you learned in padded shoes. Minutes 2 through 5. The cerebellum processes the error signal. It cannot allow the skeletal hammer to hit the concrete. It intervenes. It rewrites the locomotor software in real time. You do not have to consciously regulate it. The biological programming executes automatically. Your stride shortens. Your cadence increases. Your center of mass shifts forward. The cerebellum explicitly prohibits the heel strike. It forces the midfoot or forefoot to accept the primary kinetic load. You are watching a 2-million-year-old survival algorithm reboot itself under pressure. Minute 10. The mechanical hardware aligns with the new neural software. Because the forefoot is striking first, the ankle joint is forced to articulate. The soleus and gastrocnemius muscles are violently recruited to decelerate the body eccentrically. The Achilles tendon, shortened and stiffened by decades of heel elevation, is suddenly placed under immense tensile load. It begins to yield. It stretches, storing and releasing elastic kinetic energy exactly as evolution dictated. The 33 joints in the foot unlock from their functional paralysis. The plantar fascia is forced to act as a tension bridge, distributing the load across the metatarsal heads. The rigid arch of the foot is forced to deform, flatten, and recoil. The natural shock absorber comes entirely back online. This is the eradication of the impact transient. Because the foot is now attenuating its own impact, the kinetic shockwave never reaches the tibia. The invisible sledgehammer never strikes the meniscus. The shear stress on the patellofemoral joint drops exponentially. You have saved the passive structural joints by forcing the active muscular tissues to do the mechanical work they were engineered to execute. The transition will be mechanically brutal on your atrophied tissues. Your calves will burn. Your intrinsic foot muscles will fatigue rapidly. The Achilles tendon will demand a strictly measured, calculated progression to handle the restored tensile force without tearing. Do not mistake this adaptation pain for damage. It is the sensation of biological weakness being systematically eradicated by physical demand. The tissues are receiving the mechanical stress signal. They are remodeling. They are rebuilding collagen density. The cushioned shoe was a sensory anesthetic. Removing it is the surgical procedure. This biological machine possesses a violent, relentless capacity for structural self-repair, provided you stop interfering with its fundamental mechanics. But the evolutionary ultimatum remains. Will you strip away your synthetic armor and face the brutal reality of physics? Or will you surrender to the artificial comfort that is quietly dismantling your skeleton? Comfort is a biological poison. Evolution did not optimize this machine for ease. It optimized it for survival, and survival demands structural integrity. The cushioned shoe is not merely a piece of apparel. It is the physical manifestation of a modern world obsessed with insulating you from reality. When you strap a synthetic pillow to the bottom of your foot, you are negotiating a fatal transaction. You are trading a momentary, artificial sensation of softness today for the permanent, irreversible destruction of your knee cartilage by the time you reach 50. It is the worst biological trade in the history of our species. This machine requires friction. It requires gravity, rigid surfaces, and unfiltered mechanical stress to maintain its architecture. Deny it these inputs, and it will dismantle itself from the inside out. The foam sole is just one symptom of a much larger disease: the systematic elimination of physical effort through modern convenience. Physics is absolute. It cannot be negotiated with, and it does not accept apologies. The compressive loads will always find a destination. The only variable remaining is whether you choose to absorb that load with the magnificent, active musculature you were born with, or let it crush the passive joints you cannot replace. I cannot make that choice for you. The machine is yours. If you possess the intellectual rigor to abandon the comforts that are slowly destroying you, and if you demand the unvarnished biomechanical truth about the structure you live inside, subscribe to this channel. We have many more modern lies to dissect.